Hello, I'm Keith Devlin, a mathematician in Stanford University. I've spent the last 15 years studying the development and use of video games in mathematics education. I'm one of the first academics to do university research in game-based math learning. I've written a seminal book on the topic, published a number of research articles, and devoted a number of posts in my blog profkeithdevlin.org to the design of good math learning video games, including a 6-part series in 2012. Many of the insights and tips I give in my book and my blog I learned through many years consulting for the commercial video game industry here in Silicon Valley, where I live. Based in part on that experience, 3 years ago I founded my own educational technology company, Brainquake, to design and build video games for mathematics education, bringing out our first game, Was It Trouble?, in 2014. Whenever teachers or parents read one of my game articles or attend one of my game talks, their most common question about math video games is, how do I decide which games to buy? There's a bewildering selection to choose from. Apple's App Store alone lists over 17,000 math apps for pre-college age students, many of them games. There are probably a similar number of math apps available for Android devices on Google Play. And then there are all the browser-based apps that you play on the web. Many apps are little more than animated flashcards. So how do you find a good math game? One the child, or adult, will enjoy playing, which will also deliver on the promise of good math learning. Research has shown that you need 2 things to make a successful learning video game. It needs to be a good game, and it needs to embed sound pedagogy. Pedagogy that's suited to a video game. You need to take both into account when choosing a learning game. Incidentally, a number of recent studies have shown that when the developer gets it right, in terms of both game engagement and good pedagogy, as little as 2 hours of play can result in significant learning gains. Understanding those results is another story, but they show that it can be worth looking for those good games. So how do you find them? In making your search, you should bear in mind that no video game is going to replace a good teacher. What video games offer is the opportunity to supplement and support good classroom teaching. In many cases, by providing attractive and engaging learning experiences to be pursued by the student at home. So how do you choose? The obvious answer is to look at the published research. But there you've got a problem. Though many game developers make claims about the effectiveness of their products, there is, unfortunately, very little scientifically sound research on the actual learning outcomes from specific games. In fact, a recent study carried out by university researchers in the Netherlands and published last year in the International Journal of Serious Games found that hardly any games have been subjected to a solid outcomes research study that controls for possible confounding factors. That situation is changing, but not many teachers are going to have the time to comb through the research literature looking for evidence to help them decide whether to buy a particular game. Fortunately, there are some quick and easy ways to find out. Perhaps the most reliable is to go to the US Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences page for Small Business Innovation Research Awards. Since good learning games cost money to build, but hardly ever make a profit, developers who set out to create and validate a good learning game generally turn to the IES SBIR program for funding. The SBIR program makes awards of up to $150,000 for initial development and classroom testing research over 6 months, and up to $1 million for more substantial follow-on development and testing over 2 years. These awards are highly competitive and subject to intensive review by both academics and business experts, who ask for in-depth assessment of learning outcomes as a significant part of the project. As I know from having successfully applied for one for my company last year, they require a proposal every bit as academically rigorous as any other Department of Education or NSF award. If a game has been produced with an SBIR grant, you can conclude with a high degree of confidence that it's been shown to support good learning in line with the Department of Education's guiding principles. Moreover, if a math game you are thinking of buying comes from a developer who has not had an SBIR award, you should ask yourself, why not? Why did that developer not get funding and validation at the same time? without giving up any control of their company as they would have to for investor funding. Another place to look for information is the online International Journal of Serious Games, where that Dutch study I mentioned earlier appeared. Papers published there are subjected to a high standard of academic peer review. I know that firsthand. A university research paper I co-authored last year was published there in a special issue on math learning games in October. The 3 independent reviewers asked for an extensive rewrite, together with several additions providing more information about our study. There are also a couple of learning games platforms targeted at teachers. One of them, the non-profit GlassLab, was started in 2012 with funding from the Gates Foundation. GlassLab invites learning game developers to partner with them to distribute a game based on their own evaluation of the game. Again, I know from personal experience that they have high standards. They also provide teachers and students with progress analytics dashboards, having a uniform interface across all the games they offer. BrainPop, founded way back in 1999, is similar. But whereas GlassLab focuses on mobile games, BrainPop concentrates on web games. With both platforms, you can be confident that a game presented has been subject to close scrutiny in terms of both playability and learning. Both organisations have researchers who pursue game-based learning studies of the games they feature. Finally, I should mention that the NCTM has some useful information about using learning games on its website, but they don't provide information about particular games. Those 4 resources, the SBIR grants page, the International Journal of Serious Games, GlassLab and BrainPop, are the ones I'm familiar with, both as a university scholar and a game developer, and which I can personally vouch for. There are other places to look. If you run a Google search on the phrase "video games for learning math," you'll find yourself presented with almost 11 million hits. I'm sure that among them are some really good resources. When I ran the search on March 25th, 2016, 4 of the top 5 were for things I'd written. But from the second page onwards, most of the links that came up were to other sources. There are bound to be some gems in there. The only caution I'd give is that, as we know, Google rankings are based in part on popularity, and that can be influenced by marketing. So as with an online trip to the App Store, it's a case of buyer beware. For that reason, I recommend you start with the 4 resources I've given. Good luck.